my position on this, whether when I was on active duty, and I served probably over 10 years in Europe and various NATO commands, is to push back hard and to draw the line and to make sure that the Russians understand that this shall not pass.
The head of the Royal Navy says Britain is close to losing the Atlantic to Russia for the first time since the end of the Second World War. The First Sea Lord, General Sir Gwyn Jenkins, used a conference in London today to issue one of the starkest warnings yet about Britain's capability at sea amid the rising threat of underwater attack.
Despite the millions of lives and the cost of their egregious illegal invasion of Ukraine, they continue to invest billions in their maritime capabilities, particularly in their northern fleet. A 30% increase in Russian incursion in our waters just in the last 2 years. It's most visibly seen in the presence of their spy ships, like the Yantar. But I can tell you today, the Yantar is only the visible bit you see in the public, and it's not the bit that worries me the most. It's what's going on under the waves that most concerns me. I can also tell you today that the advantage that we have enjoyed in the Atlantic since the end of the Cold War, the Second World War, is at risk. We are holding on, but not by much. There is no room for complacency. Our would-be opponents are investing billions. We have to step up.
Well, that was the First Sea Lord, General Sir Gwyn Jenkins. Admiral James G Foggo is a retired United States Navy admiral and commander of the United States Naval Forces in Europe and Africa. He's now US Dean of the Centre for Maritime Strategy. Admiral, a warm welcome to you. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Kate, it's a pleasure to be with my friends across the Atlantic in the UK. Thank you.
I wonder what you make of the comments there by General Sir Gwyn Jenkins, the head of the Royal Navy. Do you echo his concern, or is he perhaps deliberately being stark about this to, well, let's be honest, try and raise support, try and raise further finances, further recruitment for the British Navy?
Well, I look at it a little differently, Kate. I think, first of all, General Sir Gwyn Jenkins, being the First Sea Lord, is one of the most experienced officers in the joint force of the United Kingdom. And what he's seeing is a surge in Russian activity across the board. And I don't know, some of the headlines out there say that we are about to lose the Atlantic. I think, to use his terms, we're holding on, but there's a risk. And certainly you want to bring that risk to the attention of the purser, the government, the resources, so that we can continue to put resources into the game in undersea warfare. Clearly, the Russians built a great submarine. And throughout the conflict in Ukraine, President Putin has continued to funnel rubles into the Russian Design Bureau, where they make these ships. But our allies, the United Kingdom with its Astute class and the United States with its Virginia class submarine, are unmatched.
Yeah, let's talk about the threat within the Atlantic. It is a huge expanse of water, of course. Covers North and South America on the west. It borders Europe and Africa on the east. Just spell out to us some of the threats within that water from Russia, so that we can get a handle on what we're dealing with, and then we'll perhaps talk about how Allied forces are trying to come up against those threats at the moment.
Sure. Well, you've read a lot and you've heard a lot in the United Kingdom about critical undersea infrastructure. You've had the Russian reconnaissance ship, scientific survey ship, which doubles as a reconnaissance ship, Yantar, off your coast. The Russians have a very capable program of information and intelligence gathering using airborne assets, surface assets, and of course, undersea assets with their own submarines. Their submarines are impressive. The Yasin class, and one that I am most familiar with, the Severodvinsk, is a very quiet submarine, carries hypersonic cruise missiles and caliber cruise missiles. They also have a version of the Oscar II class submarine. These are all NATO nomenclature names, called Belgorod. Belgorod has the Poseidon underwater torpedo. This is one that Putin has championed for years, and finally they released a video of a test in the last few months. This torpedo is a hypercavitating, very fast torpedo, supposedly can cross the Atlantic, and also supposedly, according to the Russians, has a dual capable warhead, so conventional and nuclear. And who do you think that would target crossing the Atlantic? Well, that would be the United States of America. It also has another mission too. It carries a deep diving nuclear submersible submarine that can, explore things on the bottom of the ocean. And there's where we get into critical infrastructure and the threat. You've seen this real time play out in the Baltic Sea with the Russian Shadow Fleet. And, these are a number of commercial ships under Russian flag or different flags that inadvertently, quote unquote, drop their anchors and destroy pipelines and cables that carry all of our internet connectivity, some of our secure communications, and certainly data for our markets, our stock markets. So there's a lot at risk there.
Yeah, it could cause economic collapse if our underwater sea cables were to be damaged or cut by Russia. There's been here a 30% increase in Russian incursions into British waters in the past 2 years. We've seen spy ships like the Yantar, that's suspected of mapping underwater cables. It entered UK waters last month. It shone lasers at military pilots. So we are aware of the threat. Why do Russia do this so openly? When you think about what is going on in Ukraine, you think about the involvement of the United States and other European countries as well. Why is Russia so flagrantly showing its hand?
I think they're testing to see what the response will be. It's like the old adage from the German generals of World War I or Bismarck, who said you put the bayonet in and you keep pushing as you push through flesh until you reach bone. And so they want to see what the reaction of allies and partners is going to be. And, my position on this, whether when I was on active duty, and I served probably over 10 years in Europe and various NATO commands, is to push back hard and to draw the line and to make sure that the Russians understand that, this shall not pass. Now, we did that last Christmas at the time of the real significant increase or uptick in activity of the Russian Shadow Fleet in the Baltic. And I think it was on Christmas Eve when the commander of Northwoods, the British Vice Admiral, decided to rally everybody. And on Christmas Day, the response, action was taking place. And those vessels have been tracked or shadowed. The Shadow Fleet is being shadowed by NATO forces and a significant number of them. And the number of incidences of cut pipelines or cables has been reduced significantly. So that's an effect. And I think we need to take more of those effects. When the Russians came out for their deployment to Cuba in June of 2024, they brought with them the Gorshkov class frigate, which I'm quite familiar with from NATO exercises that I ran in the high north off of Norway, exercise Trident Juncture. Also a Severodvinsk class submarine, a Yasin class submarine. It's very quiet, but again, we hold the edge with Astute in Virginia. They brought an auxiliary vessel for food, supplies, fuel, and a tugboat. Russians never go anyplace without a tugboat because they're afraid that their equipment is going to break down. And as they came out and broke out from the Barents and the GI-UK gap into the Atlantic, allies and partners were all over this deployment. So that's what we have to do. We have to show them that we know they're there, and that if necessary, we could take action if they do something untoward.
Look, I mean, that is a decent thing to say, and that has certainly been the policy up until now. But we've been covering a lot the national security strategy published by the White House on Friday. Our Prime Minister's spokesperson was asked about it today. In that document, it says that Europe doesn't spend enough on defence. It suffers from economic stagnation. Europe is at risk of civilizational erasure. It criticises the European Union and other transnational bodies that undermine political liberty and sovereignty, criticises migration policies, transforming the continent and creating strife. It absolutely lays into Europe in all areas. We know that the US is incredibly critical of NATO. It no longer wants to have a hand in NATO when it comes to the war in Ukraine with Russia. What are we to interpret from this? We know that we should be on high alert because of Russia in our waters and beyond, and in our skies. But yet the United States seems to be saying to European nations, we're no longer with you.
Well, I refuse to believe that. I'll tell you this: I am a huge proponent of the transatlantic alliance. My father was a Commonwealth officer, and so were both my grandfathers who fought on the ground in France in World War I. My dad was commissioned in an officer in Bexhill in England. He was with Canadian forces, went across the Channel in World War II to end the war of all wars. And since the development of nuclear weapons, which ended the war in the Pacific, we just celebrated Pearl Harbor Day here. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization has maintained a peace and a deterrent posture for 80 years. So I'm a firm believer, and you set politics aside. You know, I used to work for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen, a very distinguished officer, very successful officer in this country back when I was a Navy captain. And he would always say, hey, we are apolitical, whether in uniform or when retired. So there's a lot of politics in the national security statement that came out over the weekend. I've read it, all 33 pages. The one thing that I would agree with in the NSS is that there needs to be more spending on defense. And I think that's exactly what the First Sea Lord was referring to with his remarks. We are at risk and we are holding on, but we're going to have to do something. And so that 5% goal shouldn't be a goal. It should be actually happening today. And there are many nations that are meeting that requirement, but not all of them. And so we have to control the narrative. We have to control the technology. We have to be what I call the apex predator. Just published an article on undersea warfare in defense opinion here in the United States. It's entitled, "As the Undersea Grows More Contested, U.S. Navy Subs Are the Right Response." And it's very similar to what your First Sea Lord said. This was published about a week ago, and it's that we've got to continue to pump dollars into the program to maintain the edge. We have a couple of problems here in the United States. We've got readiness issues. We need to get ships out of dry dock and on deployment. We have fallen behind, but the current administration is taking a round turn on that, and they're doing something that the Chief of Naval Operations calls the foundry, the fleet, and the fight. So we're going to fix our ships. We're going to build new ships. We're going to encourage foreign competition in our maritime industrial base. And we're going to put the fleet to sea, and we're going to fight the wars that are necessary to be fought, and we're going to deter those that we can deter. So one last point, and that is, as far as NATO is concerned, the United States started a JFC, a Joint Force Command here in Norfolk, Virginia, just south of me, about 5 years ago, and it's now at full operational capability, and it shares responsibility with the other side of the Atlantic in securing the Atlantic. So I think the United States is very much still in the game.
Okay.
And that strategy is just kind of a nod to, hey, we need to spend some more money here. So let's all pay up.
Look, it has got many European nations alarmed. Maybe that is the point of it. Admiral James G Foggo, thank you so much for being with us. Retired United States Navy Admiral and Commander of the United States Naval Forces in Europe and Africa, now US Dean at the Center for Maritime Strategy.